So we'll start now, Gideon, right? Sure. Thank you, Gideon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a good day today. So we'll start with the second session today, and this is what we covered yesterday. Four broad topics and very basic concepts. Today we'll cover in some more detail about some more topics like hashing, private public keys, consensus mechanism, DeFi. There are other small topics also which I'll try to cover in between, which are important in the context to understand these four topics. Okay, so today is slightly technically heavy, so will bear with me. If we finish everything today, then it's okay. Otherwise, we'll try to utilize some time tomorrow, so we don't leave any of the important concepts. So, having said that, let's dive into the first topic, which is hashing. So yesterday we spoke about that hashing plays a very important role in blockchain, especially how the blocks are chained together is through hash. So let's understand in a bit more detail what exactly hashing is. So to start with, let's take a very simple hash example. This is just to make you understand. This is not the real example, but we'll give you a sense of what is happening. So suppose that I send an email to X and X needs to verify that what I sent her is exactly what she received. That means like if I'm sending a particular message with say, let's say hi X, then X want to be sure that the message is hi X and it has not been tempered in while the in between or within the logistics. So let's say the email contains the word hello. So we encode the word. We say A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and Z is equal to 26. So based on that, since H is the 8 letter, so we have sequence 8, 5, 12, 12, and 15. We multiply these number, and this is the result which we get after multiplication, 86,400. So we post the hash on the website, and after X gets the email, she does the same hash by checking my website. So she also sees the message, and this is the number she drive, and then she drives this multiplication. If the message was corrupted, the hash will not match. For example, if this hello HELLO becomes HALLO, then the result will be 717280 instead of 86400. So when these two results does not match, we'll say that the message has been tampered in. So this is a very, you can say, kind of very basic example of hash, like how you can code or encode something into a particular message, and that may result into verification of a particular set of number or digits, or maybe it can be any message. So in Bitcoin, the hash algorithm which we used to define this kind of numbers is called SHA-256, or secure hashing algorithm. This is the tool where you can find what exactly this algorithm does. So a few properties of hashing. Hashing is a one-way function. So if you put something into that, you can generate the hash, but from the hash you cannot find out what exactly the message is. So it's a one-way engineering. You cannot do it backward engineering. Hashing is not encryption because you cannot decrypt it. So hashing is just, you can say, is a way of codifying any message, but that does not mean it doesn't it's not your encryption which you generally do in, let's say, in HTTPS. So it's just hashing. So we'll understand more about it. So for example, passwords are routinely stored on websites in hash form. So websites generally does not store our regular password. They store the hash of it. So this is the example of hash. So let's say if we go to this SHA-256 algorithm and we put message hello world exclamation mark 0. So this is the hash for it. If we change the message to hello world exclamation marks 1, so this will be the hash. And if you put 2 here and if you put 4250, you can see all the hash will change. So you can see a pattern here. Actually, there is no pattern. All these hash are completely different, though only one single digit or place has been changed in this message, but the entire hash has been changed, and we cannot correlate between whether what kind of message was there if we don't know what exactly the message is. So that's why we call it. It's a one-way function. You cannot from this hash you'll not be able to find out what the message was. This is the tool which is available on GitHub, and we can play with it. So I've actually put these screenshots. So I put this message here, hello world one, and this is the hash which was being generated. So these are the 4 tools which I've used yesterday just to show you around so you can have a feel of it. Bitcoin uses Bitcoin blockchain uses SHA-256. If we talk about Ethereum, it uses another algorithm which is known as CAC-256. And different hashing algorithm have different outputs. So SHA-256 everywhere will have same output, but its output will be different from CAC-256. Then there is a concept called hexadecimal. So what happens in hashing? Hash function takes an electronic record. It can be anything like PDF, video, email, or just a text message, and produce a fixed length output of 64 characters. And if the information is changed in a way, even a single comma, a different output value is produced, what we saw on the last slide. And there is no way to calculate the original record from the hash because there is no backward engineering. Now this is, you have seen these random numbers in last slides. So how these numbers are generated, we see there are numericals and there are text also. So this is the logic behind it, which is the hexadecimal logic. So we use 0 to 9 and letters from A to F. So these are 16 characters. That's why the name is hexadecimal. So all your hashes are contain a number from 0 to 9 and only these 6 letters, which is A to F. If we see the decimal equivalent, which we use in mathematical world, this will be the equivalent. So 0 to 9 will remain same. Instead of A, we use 10 in regular mathematics. For B, we use 11. For C, we use 12, so on and so forth. So if we convert, let's say, a particular hexadecimal into decimal, this is the this will be the result. So there are utilities which can be used. So this is one such utility from where you can drive hexadecimal based on decimal. So this is important to know because this is the basis for all kind of hashing which is being generated. Some of the hashing properties, it is of fixed length of 64 characters, and hash is always it remains same irrespective of whatever. If you use a particular algorithm, let's say SHA-256, it will give you 64 character length hash. It's deterministic. The same input will always lead to the same output, irrespective of the time and place. It's irreversible, given the hash is impossible to get back. So as we explained previously, collision resistance, that means two messages cannot have same hash. So if 2 messages have the same hash, that means the hashing algorithm is broken and it becomes a collision. And it's correlation resistance also. Like even for slight change in input, the entire hash will change. That means if you try to compare 2 hash, and even if those are for very similar messages, you cannot make out from the hash itself whether the message was similar or dissimilar. This is a same kind of example which we saw yesterday. Blocks are being generated and chained together. And yesterday we saw we had two things here. One is previous hash and one was the hash. So that hash was actually known as transaction root. So we'll understand more about it. So that hash which is being put in is based on this logic known as Merkle tree. So let's say on Bitcoin, there are 4 transactions. So 4 different people have transferred money to 4 different addresses. So how the hash is calculated? We put it at the Merkle tree, and there are 4 transactions will be there, hash will be calculated for each transaction under SHA-256. Okay, then a pair will be taken and another hash will be calculated, and same will be done for these two transactions. And again, there is one more step to have hashing of these two hashes which has been created, and the final hash is this, which is known as transaction root, or we also call it Merkle root. So whatever hash we see is not for individual transaction, but a master hash or a Merkle root which is put into the block header. So here, for example, we are showing only 1, 2, and 3 steps. But if we go in actual for a particular Bitcoin transaction, there can be thousands of steps where this kind of hash will be calculated. So with this approach, this becomes a kind of a very powerful concept. So you can see like going from this hash to this hash, then encoding this, and then getting to the transaction is very cumbersome task. And even the supercomputers will need a lot of computing speed if they have to calculate everything to the transaction level. So that's why we say it's a very difficult one. And anyways, the one of the hashing property is like if you have this hash, you'll not be able to calculate these two hashes. So that's why we say it becomes very almost impossible for going from this hashing to the entire end of it. Um, this is about the Merkle tree or the Merkle root, which is being put into the block. Then there is another concept called wallets. So you must have heard about like people save their Bitcoin or Ethereum on a wallet. So let's understand some more about it. So these are the types of wallet which we have. We have two categories: hot wallets and cold wallets. In hot wallets, we cover desktop wallets, web wallets, and mobile wallets, right? And in cold wallets, we cover paper wallets and hardware wallets. So let's understand more about this. Hot wallets are the one which connects to the internet. It offers less security because obviously we are going online with it. Hot wallets offer better accessibility. From user perspective, you only have to log in, put your username and password, and you can access. Hot wallets are vulnerable to fraudster attack because, of course, if you are on internet, then it's always vulnerable. Very user friendly because you get a very nice interface, put your login ID, password, and access that. In cold wallets are generally in offline mode. Okay, and some types of cold wallets that connect to the internet even while retaining their basic working functionality. So what happens? Cold wallets are generally offline, but let's say if you have to do transaction, then you have to go online. So you just, let's say if you have a USB drive, so you plug that into your laptop. That flash drive, that laptop will read the flash drive, and only for that particular time, cold wallet will be connected to the internet. For all other time, it won't. This is the example of desktop wallet. So this is one of the wallet known as Armory. So its application on desktop generate a data file for holding the keys, password for accessing the keys remains on your system. Advantage of ownership of your key, risk of physical damage and malware virus infection is there because it resides on your laptop itself. Then we have web wallets. So web wallets are your browser-based wallets, generally accessed through web browser, ensure accessibility for crypto assets from anywhere. So this is one of the example. This is known as MetaMask wallet, which is used for Ethereum virtual machine and few more networks. So like here we can see Ethereum mainnet is there. Then we have these are the Ethereum test networks, which we discussed yesterday. And the same kind of web wallets can be accessed from the mobile also. So the interface which is here is from mobile wallet, but the same wallet is available on the web portal also. Cold wallets. So cold wallets, we have two types. One is called paper wallets. So paper wallets is generally you go to a particular website and you generate something like this, and it gives you the information to you only one time. So it gives you private key, it gives you public key, it gives you address, it gives you something called WIF. So once this key is created, it's recommended that you write it down or print it and keep it in a safe place, because these keys are only displayed once, and if you lose the key you will lose the access to this wallet. So it's highly recommended for paper wallet that whenever you generate it, just write it down or print it down and keep it at a safe place. Paper wallet is like piece of paper with your private and public key is printed. Some might have scannable barcode. Yeah, now people give you barcodes also. Store and take access to your cryptocurrency offline, so you can actually keep it completely offline on any of your devices. When you print your keys, they are removed from the cryptocurrency networks. That means it's only given once, and you cannot print it for the second time. And we have hardware wallets. These are also very famous wallets. Like we have this Ledger USB keys where you can keep your cryptocurrencies, and you only have to plug into the network whenever you want to do a transaction. This offers security by completely avoiding the online exposure of private keys. So if you're not going internet, it's highly impractical for anybody to crack your USB device unless they have the physical possession of it. Hardware wallets save your private keys on a physical device like this one. Even if the device is connected to the internet, the private key does not leave the device, it remains over there. The device would request the transaction details and provide validation for the data. So let's say you are doing a particular transaction, and let's say you are connected to your MetaMask wallet, but your private key is stored here. So whenever you plug in, only then your transaction will be validated. Otherwise, it won't. So this is very basic concept just for you to understand like what exactly happens over there. Then let's talk a bit about what are public, private keys and addresses. So we spoke about cryptography yesterday. So cryptography is basically a way in which the data, when it moves between the between various addresses, is encrypted. So for sake of simplicity, let's try to understand the kind of cryptography we have. So we have two kind of cryptography. One is called symmetric key cryptography, and another one is asymmetric key cryptography. So there were two concepts previously. We had private keys and public key. So what is a private key? So private key is just a kind of random number. So you must have heard about people say, don't share your seed phrases with everyone. So that seed phrase is nothing but combination of some of the random phrases which you come up, which is known as your private key. You can actually create it by yourself. And the public key is mathematically linked with the private key. So you can put it under a few algorithm, and with the private key which you have generated and chosen by yourself, will give you a linked public key. It's easy to go from private key to public key, but it's difficult to go from public to private. So you can also, it's not impossible to go from public to private, but it's highly computational demanding if you want to do that. The current technology which is used in Bitcoin is called elliptic curve cryptography, also known as an ECC. So this is the algorithm. These two are the example of symmetric and asymmetric encryption. So let's try to understand the symmetric first. So the asymmetric will be easy to understand. So whenever we use symmetric cryptography, in that case, we use the same key to encrypt and decrypt the data. So let's take example of this. I am the sender, and I have some plain text data which I want to send to the receiver. Okay, so I take this data, I shared secret encryption key or data, or I encrypt it with my private key here. Okay, then the data is locked. Once it reaches to the recipient, he used the same key to decrypt the data, and then he understands the message. So the message which I sent here, if let's say it's going somewhere else and any hacker is there in between and they want to see this data, they cannot see the data unless they have the possession of the key. Okay, so, and in this case, the key is shared by one guy with the other guy. So in the case where encryption and decryption is done with the same key is known as symmetric encryption. Why symmetric? Because we are using similar key. So you can imagine the asymmetric encryption will be where the key used are different. So what do we use here? We use public and private key combination. Because what happens in Bitcoin world, people do not know each other. They are only working through network of system. So it's very difficult for them to share the key like symmetric encryption. So that's why we come up for asymmetric encryption. So what happens in this? The sender sends a message and it's encrypted through public key. Okay, then there is a ciphertext, same like we had here. So unreadable unless you are able to detect it. Then when it goes to the receiver, receiver use the private key to decrypt the data, and then message can be readable. So in this case, the key combination is being used. So what we generated here, the private key and public key combination, these two keys are being used here for encryption of data. So in this case, just imagine a Bitcoin scenario that this guy is sending some Bitcoin to this girl. So he will, when he sends the Bitcoin, he will encrypt that with public key of the girl, and once it reaches the girl, she will decrypt the message through her private key, because private key is only known to her, and then only she'll be able to read the message. So that's how the encryption happens in the Bitcoin and the Ethereum world. It's slightly difficult to get in the first shot, but just imagine like where you use the same key to encrypt and decrypt is symmetric, where you use a combination of public and private key to do encryption decryption is called asymmetric encryption, and almost all the blockchain will use asymmetric encryption. This is an example of how public and private key are linked together. So a sample ECDSC private key looks like this. So when you create or input seed phrases, this is the output which we get in hash form. This is the private key, and then this is the public key. So this public key is derived from this private key, and this public key has been obtained by your ECC algorithm. Then let's say this is the sample data, and the sample data says, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. So if we take this message and we put it under a simple digital signature for the above data, so this is the kind of signature which we'll have. This all process is followed in Bitcoin also. So that's why we are going to get the feel of it. You don't have to go exactly because this all machine is doing, but just to get a feel like what exactly happening in the background. So this is what private and public key does. These are the addresses. So this is for Ethereum address. What is the logic behind creation of Ethereum address? So Ethereum address it looks like this: 64 characters, prefix with 0x. So all the Ethereum address you'll see will always start with 0x. So Bitcoin and Ethereum use this elliptic curve digital signature algorithm for signing transaction. So, and these are some of the steps that we first generate a private key, which is 256-bit, 64 hacks or 32 bytes, same like which we were doing in last slide also. We use ECDSA algorithm to generate a public key. The private and public key are known as key pair, which we saw in asymmetric encryption. With this, you can sign the transaction with the private key. And even with your public key can verify the signature is valid, and the Bitcoin and Ethereum address are linked to these keys. So this is how the transaction actually flows. If you want to know in more detail like what exactly is happening, you can actually go to this link and read more about it. So it explains each and every step of how a transaction moves. I'm not covering it today because that concept itself will take like more than 40-45 minutes. So it's better just get the feel here and then try to read by yourself what exactly is happening over there if you're interested. If you are a regular user, then of course this thing you don't have to worry about. This system is doing for you. This is the Ethereum address. How is it derived? So this is a 4-step process. So I've explained the same thing here, but let's go here directly. So we have the private key, which is this generated based on a seed phrase. Then we take the public key and we prepend it by 04. So we put the 04 here, and then the private public key which has been generated based on this. Then we take this entire thing and we put this into CAC 256 algorithm, and then we get this hash. Out of this hash, we take only the blue part out and prefix this with the 0x, and this becomes your Ethereum address. So this is the logic behind. So from this, you cannot drive this, you cannot drive this, you cannot drive this as a layman. So this is the kind of 4-step process used in all Ethereum addresses. And you see any Ethereum, as I said, you will always find 0x prefix. So you can see this address, you can see this address. And this is the logic which has been taken from Ethereum white paper, like what exactly is happening. For Bitcoin, the steps are slightly more. in comparison to Ethereum. Ethereum only has 4, but Bitcoin has many. So it starts with the private ECDSA key. So this is your private key generated. Then you have public key pair here. Then we perform SHA-256 on public key. We get this output. Then we use another algorithm, which is known as wrappped, and we hash the result of this last hash, and we get this number. Okay, then we add version number byte in front of wrappped160 output. So let's say this is version 00. So we prefix 00 followed by this output which we got in last step. Then we do another 256 SH256 on the last input. We get this hash. Then after this, we perform one more SHA256, and this is what the result we get. And then we only take out these first 9, these first 8 characters, and we use this in the address. We add 4 checksum bytes to the extended wrappped. So this is the wrappped output which we had here, this one, and then we attach these 8 digit to here, and then we convert it to a base 56 algorithm. So, and this base 58 algorithm is upper and lowercase letters, and it excludes number like 0, O, I, and L because it looks like same, so it doesn't consider this. And this is the output which come for the Bitcoin address. So whenever you share somebody any address of Bitcoin, so this is how it has been derived. So there are multiple steps. As a user, you will always see this number, right? But whatever algorithm or wallet you are running in, that wallet will be calculating your public key based, this Bitcoin address based on these steps. So slightly more here in comparison to Ethereum, but this is the kind of logic which has been put into actually Bitcoin addresses. The concept which we talked yesterday was about consensus mechanism. So like what exactly is happening during the mining. So consensus mechanism is the mechanism by which nodes agree on both the historical blockchain as well as the new addition to the historical blockchain. So let's go in more detail here. So consensus is an agreement among a group of people or an idea, statement, or plan of action. So it can be a majority, so like 51%. So if 51% of the nodes agree that the transaction is valid or correct, then the transaction will be added in the block. Otherwise, it will not be added. Some of the blockchain take, so like Bitcoin proof of work, it follows 51% principle. So there are some of the blockchain which follow super majority, so you have to go for 66%. In some cases, it can be unanimous. I don't think any blockchain follows this, but there may be some who says 100% of the miner have to always agree with it. Maybe it's applicable in most of the private blockchain, and it's weighted. Not all votes are weighted equally. So when we have this 51%, so if one guy is carrying 10% of the power, so that guy will have more vote in comparison to all other guys. And this consensus is typically only relevant when there is no centralized leader. So we saw yesterday that there are 4 kind of blockchain: permissionless public, permissionless private, and this permission private, permissionless private. So only in case of we saw the public blockchain, which is permissionless public, where we had the Ethereum proof of work and Bitcoin proof of work, because they're all decentralized. That's why consensus is required. Consensus may not be required in case of, let's say, private blockchain. And this is particularly important when there is a significant disagreement or potential for untrustworthy party. So we know like Bitcoin or Ethereum networks are all public. And when it's public, there will be people who will try to take advantage of the system. So there will always be some untrustworthy party. So this proof of work or other consensus become very important when you are trying to identify such kind of untrustworthy party in the system itself. The agreement of system components, which are nodes on next state of the system, or the transition between the current state and the next state. So it's basically current state is, let's say I want to transfer this money. to A. So this is first state, and when the money is transferred, it will be credited to the wallet of B. So then that becomes the second state. So nodes agree whether the transition for first step to the second step is correct or being in a trustworthy manner. If it's not, then they reject that particular transaction. The node must agree on a set of valid transactions. So that means sorry. So that means node must agree on a set of valid transactions. So if a transaction is coming in and it has the right public key, right private key, right digital signature, then that's the set of rules which are defined. And if those are matching, that means the transactions are valid. And this consensus must be achieved automatically. This is generally done through system, so there is no human oversight. So if a human is started to have tampering in it, that means the system is becoming failure. I mean, you cannot trust it anymore. Then again, consensus is irreversible. Once the consensus is done, then you cannot say, okay, it was wrong, I did it by mistake, or machine cannot say we did it by mistake. So you cannot go back on that. The blockchain consensus is a subset of distributed system consensus. So it's again the same decentralized world which we talked about yesterday. So blockchain consensus is the set of that. It's a distributed system. That means there are a number of independent computers sitting in different places who are validating these transactions. It must be resistant to malicious or false actors. So as we mentioned, like there are, since it's exposed publicly, there are people who are coming in and who are just trying to take advantage of a particular system. And consensus is a very difficult problem when parties are not trusted. If trusted parties are there, then we don't have to do this consensus. But in an ideal practical world, that's not the case. The network must maintain the integrity in order to maintain value. Integrity in the sense we talk about that 51% majority. Let's say there is a guy who holds 60% of the power, and then he can do anything. You want to put false transaction into the system, then he can put the false transaction, right? But we have to make sure that the system integrity is maintained and it remains completely decentralized, so that one entity does not hold any power more than 51%. Past transaction must be trusted. So whenever you are creating a new transaction, you can be sure like whatever has been added into the previous block are already validated and trusted. Uh, that's how, I mean, this is the byproduct of it. So the ability to verify a transaction without trust is needed. That's the consensus property. This problem is solved with various forms of consensus. So we'll see there's proof of work, proof of stake are the most famous one, but there are multiple other consensus mechanisms which we follow. The consensus problem can often be rephrased as the ability to trust the result of a transaction or block without trusting the party involved in the transaction. So this is nothing but we are just saying the same thing in a different way. This is a consensus mechanism mind map. So proof of work is being used by Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dogecoin, Ethereum. Then there's Komodo, Litecoin, Monero. Then we have proof of stake. Algorand is using it, Cardano is using it, Binance Smart Chain, Tezos, Wave, Strong. And this Ethereum is also starting to use proof of stake, I think from midnight today. Right, so we'll have Ethereum merge done in next few hours. Then we have multiple other kind of consensus mechanisms. So like Filecoin is using proof of replication, proof of space-time. Flow is using proof of stake and specialized proof of confidential. So I'm just trying to say there are a lot of mechanisms which are there in place. So every chain can have their own set of consensus which they are following, but the most famous one are proof of work and proof of stake. And then there are others also like proof of disintegration, mining diversity, proof of elapsed time. So you'll find a lot of such. I mean, we're only covering a very few here, but if you see in practicality, they are much good. Let's talk a bit about proof of work, which is used by both Bitcoin and Ethereum as of now. So a given node collects transactions that are broadcast to the entire network and stores them in a block. So whenever you create a transaction on a Bitcoin, it goes and broadcasts to all the nodes which are connected to the network or who are the mining node. Before including transaction in the block, the node verifies that the transaction are valid. How do they verify? Through the private public key combination and digital signature. Invalid transaction result in a block being rejected by other nodes. So if they are not able to establish the authenticity, it will simply be rejected and not be added to the block. Transactions are typically assembled in a type of Merkle tree, which we saw in previous few slides. So that Merkle tree logic is being used here. The transaction pay a fees to the mining node to be included. So miners who are running their own machines, they charge a particular fees for validating these transactions. The transaction higher fees are included first. So we also discussed yesterday, if your fees is too low in a transaction, there is a possibility that it won't go through. So people try to put high fee or reasonable fees if they want to get their transaction as soon as possible. The mining node solves an extremely difficult cryptographic problem with the transaction being part of the input of the problem. So we'll see about this problem, but exactly in next few slides. So I'll skip this part because anyways we'll not be able to understand anything out of it. So the mining node that found the correct solution broadcast it to the rest of the network. So whenever miners are there, there is one node who will calculate it first, and then it will broadcast the solution to the network. That it will just simply say in computer language that the problem which you gave me, I have solved it, and this is the solution. Then the other validators will verify the solution. So verification of solution takes very less time, and finding the solution takes a very long time. So once the solution is done, it's broadcast to everyone. Then other people will check it and will say, okay, this is done. Once that confirmation comes in, then your new block is created in the long run. So this is same, we are saying the same thing over here. And this is the entire process which is being reported in the proof of work. There's some strength and some weaknesses. Proof of work is reliable, predictable. Block times are there, and it's very robust. Why is it robust? Because it has been used on, say, Bitcoin for last 14 years now. So that's why we know it's very robust. It's predictable because we have seen the performance, and it's very reliable because we have not seen any kind of hiccups with it so far, especially in case of Bitcoin. It does not rely on any other node being trustworthy because it's all computer driven. Vulnerable to so-called 51% attack. So, which I told you that if a particular party is having more than 51% of the power, it may be vulnerable. But in Bitcoin cases, we have seen that there is no single party which holds 51%. So it's very difficult to actually acquire 51% computing power when there are so many users around the world working on same computational problem. Sometimes one miner or a group of miner be able to take over the resources driving the chain forward. So this is known as pooling. So what can happen? Let's say there are 10 guys with 5% each. So they can collab together and say, okay, together we hold more than 50% of the power. So in that way, some kind of vulnerability can be there in 51% attack. Expenditure of large computing and energy cost to take 51% would be lost if crypto is collapsed. So this is the kind of, you can say, is disincentive. So let's say 51% attack is done on Bitcoin today, then everybody will know like Bitcoin has been compromised and its price will go down in the market. So if today is sitting at $20,000 and if a 51% attack is done today, the Bitcoin will collapse to actually almost zero. So the people who will actually do 51% attack will not gain anything out of it, but it will make the entire system collapse. So there is no incentive of carrying out these 51% attack on any kind of cryptocurrency. It's uncensorable and publicly broadcast. So we saw yesterday, we can go on blockchain.com and see what transactions are being conducted over there. Uncensorable, nobody can go and stop because it's decentralized. So it can be done from anywhere. And these are public transaction can be seen as a drawback in some cases. So it's all accessible to everyone. So everybody can see who is doing what. Some of the drawbacks: enormous waste of resources. So Bitcoin mining is actually using energy equivalent to Argentina. So that means there are so many machines there that the electricity consumption is way too high. So that's why sometimes it's also known as that Bitcoin is not very environmentally friendly. The machine which we use for Bitcoin are called ASIC hardware, which are very advanced mining machine, and it takes substantial advantage over the average miner. So if I want to mine, let's say Bitcoin from my laptop, I'll not be able to do that because there are a lot of miners which are using this very high efficient, very high hash rate machines, which are ASIC. So people who are holding these machines have leverage over the people who are holding like small laptops like us. A regular computer has essentially no hope of ever mining a block because the computation power is very less. There are scalability issues, lower transaction throughput. So we saw yesterday that transaction throughput of Bitcoin is 7 transactions per minute, and Bitcoin on block time is around 10 minutes. So that is kind of makes throughput of Bitcoin very less. Lowering the block time, problem difficulty is potentially less secure. So Bitcoin uses 10 minutes, but let's say if we make that time to 1 second, then it becomes highly vulnerable. Like there may be a lot of people coming in, and somebody will be able to quickly change the blockchain if they have the 51% power. And the miners often send the coins immediately, removing any loyalty to the chain they are mining. So it means that whenever a new block is generated, and as soon as the miner gets 6.25 Bitcoin, he will directly go to the market and sell it for USD and gain the cash. So he's not staking anything, or he's not keeping any you can say any loyalty to this particular system. This is nonce. So I'll not go into this one, but I'll try to show you this, which is the same thing, but in a more you can say more mathematical or pictorial way. So in proof of work, whenever we say a mathematical problem or mathematical puzzle, it's nothing but a nonce which is being put with a message. So when we saw in the block Merkle tree, so we saw in Merkle tree there was one thing called nonce. So this nonce is nothing but a small number which is randomly kept into a block, and that computation can be done by the miners. So for example, I input this kind of message, this example.com, this is the number, and this red which you see in the end is called nonce. Okay, and the hash generated for this particular message is this. Right. So what do we do? Like whenever we have this hash, so the computational problem or which is given to the miner is, say you have to find a hash by changing this nonce, which has 4 leading 0. So it should start with 0, 0, 0, 0. Then all the miners will start finding that 0, 0, 0 hash. So they'll keep changing it. They'll play with 1, 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they'll keep going randomly just to find this. So you can say in this case, if we have the same message, if we have this nonce 161,000, so we have 4 leading 0. So let's say if a computer is going one by one, so it has to do 161,000 steps before it can find the hash which start with 4 zeros. So this is the computation problem which is being given to all the miners, and this keeps changing the difficulty level. Sometimes it becomes 4-0, then 8-0, 10-0, 15-0, just to maintain the block time of 10 minutes. So what happens, let's say if there are a lot of miners coming in and the computation power becomes very high, then the system knows by itself and it will increase the number of 0 to, let's say, 10 to maintain that 10 minutes block time. Right? But on the contrary, let's say the computation power depletes and block is taking 15 or 20 minutes to mine, then the system will reduce the difficulty to, let's say, again 4 to 5 zeros. So this is the mathematical puzzle which is being solved by miners, and whoever finds these 4 first are the people who create the block. They broadcast the transaction or solution to everyone. They get the verification, and then a new block is added. So on this slide, I'm just mentioning the same thing in a more a text way. This is some of the example of the same message. So it's not that there is only one nonce, which is 161,000. There are multiple other nonces available. So these 4 zeros are everywhere. So let's say instead of going 1 by 1, 161, 000, somebody goes directly 37148 4. So he'll be able to find these 40 first. So having said that, like there can be uh, multiple norms for which solution can be valid. So like 40 can be found anywhere. So you don't have to find the entire solution. The leading zero should be 4. So that's the logic which is given by the system. Then we have another one. It's called next one is called proof of stake. So in proof of stake, we have the right to mine blocks is given out randomly but proportionally based on stake. So what happens if you want to mine a proof of stake transaction? Then you have to stake some of your coins. So let's say from next few days when Ethereum shift to proof of stake, then Ethereum will say that if you want to mine, you have to deposit 10 Ethereum with me. Okay, and you have to be trustworthy. If you do anything wrong, your 10 Ethereum will be confiscated. So that's why they have their coins on stake always. So that's how the name came in as proof of stake. So in proof of stake, only the people who have power to stake their Ethereum or other coins into the system, only those people will be able to mine. But in case of proof of work, person who has a machine will be able to mine. It doesn't matter whether he holds the coin or he doesn't hold the coin. Stake is defined as some form of their share or involvement in the network. So in case of Ethereum, it can be ETH or Ether. They expect to win the right to mine 10% of the blocks. So it's proportionate. The chosen miners still do some form of guess and check the create the block. So the same kind of norms working which is happening in proof of work will be given to these miners also, but the complexity will be slightly less because there'll be very limited number of miners over there. So there is no point of making it too complicated because some kind of trust is being built in the system through stake. The miners try various combination of features of the address and wallet and previous block variables. So same thing is happening over here. So again, there are too many verbos I have used here, but the concept remains same. Like if you stake the coins, you get the right to mine the blocks. The miners are incentivized only to provide valid blocks. So if they don't provide valid block, their stake will be confiscated, and they'll not be able to use it. They don't have the coins after that. The blocks is validated as usual by the rest of the network before they continue to the next block. So same thing, once they find the solution, they broadcast it, and if others say the solution is correct, they move ahead. There are many variations of proof of work, often named something slightly different, and the mechanism by which rewards are distributed. So we saw multiple other form of proof of consensus mechanism which are there. So some are equal to proof of stake or slightly modified version of it. So you can say most of the consensus are based on this, but only they modify the logic slightly just to fit into context of their own blockchain. Some strength, there is no useless mining, little to no hardware advantage. Uh, the 51% attack become essentially infeasible because stake is there. If you don't do right thing, your stake will be gone. The incentives to be honest are aligned. So only if you do right transaction, you'll get the right rewards. It's significantly more scalable. So you can imagine you don't have to broadcast your transaction to millions of people. It will only be broadcasted to a few people. So it makes it more scalable, and you will be able to increase your throughput or transaction per minute time. Some drawbacks, theoretically increased centralization because the only very few people will be mining that thing. That means some very few people will have the power to modify the network. So that results into centralization, and it impacts like the very concept of blockchain itself, which is actually for decentralized. Proof of stake is often claimed to be not as secure as proof of work. Not as secure is because again, if you stake a lot of Ethereum on the blockchain, so you'll get more transaction, and when you get more transaction, maybe at some point of time, you have so much of Ethereum to stake that you start validating 51, 60% transaction, and that everything comes into your hand, and then you can take advantage of that. Some other consensus which we have: delegated proof of stake, Byzantine fault tolerance, proof of capacity, lapse time, identity, authority, activity. So these are also some of the things you can read it over here. Multiple type of consensus. This is another concept known as DeFi. Uh, what we can do, it's already, I think we are already into 52 minutes in the session, so I still have few topics to cover. If I try to cover it now, I'll go very fast. So I don't think you'll get any advantage of it. So let's try to cover, I have two more topics. One is DeFi and another one is Metaverse. So maybe we can cover these tomorrow. It will take another 20-25 minutes to cover these concepts, but these are very important. So it's better that we do it tomorrow instead of doing it today. So I hope, Gideon, that is okay, because I don't want to rush a lot on these two important topics. Actually, that was the idea. So I wanted to give overview yesterday, and we can deep dive today on the topics. Mhm. So, so see, in what happens in the private blockchain, you nominate your own node validators. So you already know the guys, right? So let's say if I'm creating a private blockchain and I put four people, that whatever transaction come in, you four guys are there, and you verify and tell me whether these are correct or no. So ideally, if everything is correct in the system and if it's going well, all four parties will say like this transaction is correct. So we'll give them a very small nonce kind of. So instead of finding 4-0, we tell them, okay, you only find 1-0. You don't have to find all the zero. And they'll do it fairly quickly, and your node will be validated. So they still do some kind of mathematical computation, but the quantum of it or the complexity of it remains very less. And there is no concept of staking any coin or anything, because I think those guys or those companies who are validating the transaction have already been appointed by you, and they will charge some transaction fees from you to validate any transaction.
Yes, Ashisha,
Mhm.
there is a concept of smart contracts.
Yes.
Would you maybe brush over it briefly?
Yes. Timothy, so what happened? Smart contract is, you can say it's the terminology smart contract is, people say these are not smart and not even the contracts. So this is just a code. So as I said yesterday, so if you are writing a particular code in Python and we say if this happens, then this should be the result. So let me give you an example. So let's say you are going on a plane, and you take a travel insurance, and your travel insurance says that if your flight gets delayed by 2 hours, you are entitled to $100 compensation. So what we will do in a smart contract on a blockchain, we will write a program where we'll say if this guy has bought the insurance, okay, check whether his flight is delayed by more than 2 hours. If yes, then transfer $100 to him. If no, then don't transfer. So this logic which is being created in the system is known as smart contract, right? And it will create at a very initial stage. It cannot be modified later. So once a contract is created and you have bought the insurance, then nobody can go back and say, okay, no, let me modify it manually. So these are pre-coded concepts, or you can say logics built into the blockchain itself. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Now, as
Okay.
I write down to that, there was that that concept of nodes and their role in consensus.
Mhm.
Now,
Yes.
what are the requirements? If, for example, you were to identify a node, say in Kenya, an organization
Mhm.
X, what
Mhm.
are the prerequisites? What do they need to have as a government? What mechanism could we
Mhm.
have in place?
Actually, they don't have to have any specific infrastructure in place. Okay, so like if I want to become a node, I can become a node. So let's say if I have a proof, the consensus which we are following is proof of stake. So I don't have to do anything. I will install a proof of stake program in my computer. Okay, then my computer will become node. The only condition is that my computer should keep running, and whenever the transaction is broadcast to me, my computer should automatically validate. So theoretically, you can give it to any person who is residing, let's say anywhere, they can validate the transaction. But we want to give it to some kind of, say, trustworthy party. So we want to give it to a data center, and that data center can say, okay, my server will run like 24/7, right? So you don't there will not be any downtime. So if there is no downtime, then you can be very sure, like whatever transaction you are broadcasting, these people will keep validating. I hope that answers your question. So it all depends on the kind of consensus which you are following. And consensus is nothing but a set of rules which you can put anywhere in the system. And you can just keep broadcasting that to that particular guy.
Okay, thank you.
Ashish, thank you. My name is Lincoln.
Yes, Lincoln.
A couple of questions. I think the the hash presentation. I wasn't. It wasn't. I think I may have missed the beginning, so I
Mhm.
wasn't sure. So is that? Are you generating a key, or
Mhm.
what would that in a nutshell?
This is not a key, so let me go here. So it's just you can say, let's say this is a transaction, and I have a PDF file here,
Mm,
right? And a PDF file, I don't want to tell anybody that it's a PDF file, but I want to keep it secure. So I go
yes.
to a SHA-256 algorithm and create a hash against it, right? And from this hash, you cannot know whether it's a PDF file or it's a Word file or it's an Excel file or something else. So this is just a, you can say you are giving it a kind of mask here. Okay, so we'll
Okay.
not be able to verify anything from that.
Okay.
Okay, so this is how why the hashing is used. So it makes it a kind of anonymous at this level, and from here you cannot go back and find what exactly the transaction was.
Okay, so in the manner of speaking, you're encrypting a document.
No, 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 we are not encrypting a document, because, as I mentioned, encrypting is happens when you want to decrypt it. So why do you encrypt? So you encrypt so that whenever you send a, let's say you are encrypting an email. Why you are
Yes.
encrypting? So that when you send it to the recipient get the exact email when you decrypt it, right? So that message doesn't change. But in this
Okay.
case, it doesn't go other way. So we can only create it one way. So like from this hash, I cannot identify this hash, because it's a one-way function. It's not a two-way function. So it's not encryption. You can
Okay.
say it's a concept called hashing itself.
Okay, probably I'll be able to understand a bit more later. On the smart contract, if you have a physical asset, you've got a computer in an office and you want to create a smart contract for that asset, how would it work under the blockchain?
Actually, a smart contract cannot be created against physical contract. But what happens, yesterday we talk about a concept known as, let me go back, it's wrapped tokens, right? Or wrapped assets. So here we talked about wrapped assets. So what you can say, you can, let's say you have 1 kg of gold sitting with you. So you can say against this 1 kg of gold, I will issue 1000 coins, right? So you will wrap that 1 kg of gold into coins, and then you'll say those coins I will issue on blockchain, right? On that blockchain, which is there, then you can write any kind of smart contract, right? So you have to take the physical asset first, do wrapping of it. Once wrapping is done, then you can start writing smart contract on it.
Okay. Okay, so there has got to be an underlying asset to write a smart contract.
Yes, because smart contract is, you can say, it's a subset of entire blockchain. So you cannot say that you start with smart contract and then you create the blockchain, because then it's not valid. So there has to be a blockchain first or asset first to write a smart contract.
Okay. It's well, I'm from the finance side, so it's more of like a derivative. A derivative instrument.
Yes, so you can, in a finance way, if you want to understand. So understand in a way that you are going to a bank, right? So, but to go to the bank, you have to have bank account first.
Yes.
Right. So the first process is getting the bank account, and after that you can give the instruction. So let's say tomorrow your bank implements blockchain, and the smart contract is like, if Lincoln send this money to this particular account, validate the transaction and create to that particular account. So that's a smart contract which is created. But the prerequisite, you have to have the account, you have to have the balance to do that transaction.
Okay. Yeah. It's just like the derivatives. If you're looking to, let's say you for a mortgage-based backed security, you have to have the original mortgage for you to be able to securitize that transaction.
Yes, so you have to have your mortgage contract, you have to have your collateral, only then you can move at a later step.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate. Thank you. Appreciate.
Any other question?
Yeah, Ashish. So this is like more of clarification. So it sounds like the smart contracts are tools of like transaction validation. And I can hear, like other members are really like referring on the finance and banking industry. So can we safely say that smart contracts are maybe a better alternative to proof of work, since proof of work seems to be pretty problematic and expensive.
No. Actually, I think you didn't get the concept right. Smart contract and consensus are two separate things altogether. So, for example, because by consensus, you are adding the transaction to the block, right? So that's the final step. But smart contract is the intermediary step, which is happening before consensus or proof of work.
Okay.
Right. So you cannot replace that, because the two concepts are completely different.
Okay. So like smart contract is more for validating conditions before we get
Validating, yes, validating, automating, or you're just getting your results by predefined logic. So predefined logic in the sense, say example, you enter into some kind of agreement with somebody and you say, if you do this task, I will pay you this much money.
Yeah.
Right. So you write that code into the blockchain. Okay. And once you write to the blockchain, the smart contract, the code cannot be changed. So the guy goes to the blockchain. He says, I have done the work. Then blockchain will automatically transfer the money to the guy. So it doesn't require your consensus because you have already entered into an agreement and this logics are already part of the blockchain. So it's already a transaction. You don't have to go and manually put something over there.
Okay. All right. So just to confirm that I got it right. So since we had that smart contract, we had sort of an agreement. Yeah. So does that mean that this transaction will be completed without necessarily having the consensus bit, or are you saying the consensus bit is for adding the block to the chain?
Yeah, consensus is the last step where the block is added. But smart contract, because smart contract will generate the transaction. Okay, so let's say in Bitcoin, two steps are there. One is transferring the money. Okay, and next is executing the transaction. So transferring the money is one transaction. Executing is happening on the consensus side. But this execution, so let's say I'm saying A wants to transfer particular money to B. Okay, when this certain condition is fulfilled, right? So that certain condition is fulfilled is done through smart contract. Okay, once the condition is fulfilled, A will transfer money to B, and that transaction that A is transferring money to B will go to the proof of work consensus mechanism, and that transaction will be added to the block. So smart contract logics are being built at the transactional stage, right? But consensus is not doing transactions. It's only validating the transaction. So these are two separate processes.
Maybe I can chip in, Ashish. From what I understand is the consensus bit is blockchain being a disputed ledger kind of a system will like to have all the nodes having the same copy. Like
Yes.
Timothy has sent Maureen $1,000.
Yes.
We want that to be recorded. And since blockchain is immutable, we want all the nodes to have a copy that Timothy transferred this amount, and even 2, 3 years, 5 years down the line, you can still trace the $1,000 sent to Maureen. Where did it come from? If I'm not very wrong.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right, Timothy. The entire thing of proof of work, proof of stake is there, so that everyone has the same copy of the transaction.
Okay, all right, I got it. Thank you.
Ashish, Lincoln here again. Just staying with the smart contract, and maybe even it's good that UFA. I think Timothy yesterday. I think you think is part of UFA. You are looking to use blockchain to store your assets, the UFA assets, and some of those assets may have title. Let's say, for example, just even perhaps a vehicle which has a logbook and that logbook has a unique serial number. Are you able to capture that asset which has a physical title onto a smart contract?
So what will happen over there? You have a particular number. So let's say the unique number is X0005, right? So we'll take that X0005 number, we'll create a hash of it, and the hash will be stored in the blockchain. Right. So if you want to trace which transaction is it, you go to the Explorer, you follow that hash, and in that hash you can find what asset is it. Okay, so there you can see the asset number, that the asset number is the X0005.
Okay. When you convert the normal language, the title into a hash, is there would I be able to reverse that process as the owner of the asset?
No. No. Once the process is done, it cannot be reversed. It's immutable. If it's
Okay,
on
so
blockchain, it cannot be done.
okay, so the asset, my asset will always have a blockchain title or reference to it.
Yes, and that reference will be the hash and entire history. Even if you want to see which block does it corresponds to you, so you can see the number, the block number. Okay, then you can which date it has been mined, who mined it, who was the validator. So all that kind of information will be available with each asset.
So it means that once I have onboarded my asset, I can only sell it through to somebody who is also on blockchain.
No, because in case of UFA, once you transfer it,
Yes.
okay, so you will say this asset exit, and now we are doing a new transaction of transferring it.
Okay.
Okay, so once you do the transfer transaction, then your balance of the asset will become zero.
Okay.
Right.
And okay, what form would that transfer take?
So the transfer will be happening in the hashing form itself, because see, the purpose of having your asset on blockchain is to track the balances, right? Like how many assets do you have? But let's say if you have a physical copy of a particular check, right? So on blockchain, you are only keeping record of it. The actual check book will remain with you. Okay, and once you hand it over to the real owner, you will go to the blockchain and you will say, okay, I have handed over to the owner now, and that transaction will be created in the system.
Okay.
Ultimately, because blockchain is all about tracking the balances and checking what exactly it's a kind of accounting itself. So, but accounting, instead of going to a particular Excel or SAP system, it's going onto a blockchain system.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, any other question from anyone?
Ashish.
Yes, Nick.
Yeah, this is Nick. Would you kindly go to the slide that was talking about consensus? Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one. So I was just wondering the role that the number of nodes in a blockchain play in determining this this consensus. Like you said that the unanimous 100%, it's very rare. And what about situations whereby we have very few nodes? Wouldn't this be ideal? Because I think for the 51% majority, it's because we have so many nodes to the extent that we can't have all of them, giving a consensus.
Yes. So see, this unanimous is generally kept on private blockchain. So let's say you have appointed four nodes operator. Okay, so and you will say that once all four say the transaction correct, only then I'll be able to take this transaction into blockchain. If any one of it say that it's not correct, then there is some suspicious. I'm not going to take that. I'm going to go and check the transaction first. Right. So all depends on logic. So what you are saying, when the number of validators are very less, we would also recommend to have a unanimous 100% consensus.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other question from anyone? Okay, I think Gideon, then we are good to go. And thank you very much for today, everyone. And I'll see you tomorrow again.
From offer side, we are grateful. We are okay with everything. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.